everyone, welcome back to Alfa Art Gallery's Meet the Artist series. My name is Ian Wang, and I am here with Zach Mellman Carsey, who is an exhibiting artist for the New Brunswick Art Salon, Oil Sculpture and Mixed Media Exhibition. Hi, Zach, how are you doing today?
Hi, good, and you?
Good, thank you. My first question is, could you share the journey that led you to become an artist? What experiences or influences guided you toward making surreal arts that incorporate architectural and industrial elements?
I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. And I think it was always kind of a little bit artsy as a kid, always like drawing and things like that. But I think like a pivotal point was really when I started doing graffiti when I was like a teenager. Especially because like in a city area, there's so much that are like abandoned or left behind, and especially in like the early 2000s of Rust Belt, Ohio, and also especially after the 2008 recession, there was a lot of things that were left untouched for a while. And so it really kind of gave me and my friends kind of um, a really exciting opportunity, but also a dangerous one to kind of find this new form of self-expression, which, led me also into getting into some trouble. I got into trouble doing graffiti. And basically that kind of let me into really kind of think about like how this was so important to me at the time. And I felt so distraught that I felt that legally I was being punished for my own creativity. And so that kind of led me to like really think about actually pursuing art. And so when I went to college, I was doing well, and I thought, this might actually be the way to go. And so I think things really compounded from there in terms of like where I started and where I am now. So yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. That's really interesting because I noticed that most of your artwork actually includes graffiti and stone textures. Um, except for your experiences with the graffiti, do you have any other particular reasons behind your choices to use graffiti and stone textures in your works?
Yeah, absolutely. So like in particular, like I think that you know, like the rough textures that I kind of create that also have like graffiti, it's like they're really meant to be in proximity to like set stones. So I do use a lot of stone setting in my work. So, I do it's a process that I call it pave, but it's really if there's some real jewelers out there, it's not actually pave, but it is a lot of set stones really close next to each other. And so I really like to kind of use this as like a really great contrast and proximity to each other. So we have these like rough textures and then this like high value object or this thing that kind of like denotes wealth. And I kind of use that as my own kind of expression of like living in a dense populated area like a city, because you have so many different classes of people. And, in particular, I remember like being in the city and kind of like riding my bike and exploring and going to like the rich neighborhoods and like, looking at the big houses and kind of, and like living in this kind of like imaginary fantasy at the same time. Um, but also like, by adding in the graffiti and also these rough textures to my work, I really want them to kind of be seen as these like autonomous or even like structurally inhabiting spaces. And, I want those to like reflect a community, not necessarily any particular one, but really just that there is a community there. And so I think it creates this kind of narrative or fantasy around like where the work comes from. So.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. My next question is, many of your works are made using 3D printing techniques, while you have also mentioned in one of your artist statements your preference for traditional metalworking methods. What motivates you to continue working with these traditional techniques, and how do you combine all the techniques in your creative process?
That's a great question. So, I started my college journey, kind of finding my way into what I was going to do, but I took a jewelry and metals class, and I think I accidentally signed up for it. I thought I was taking printmaking or something because I kind of had this idea like, I'm doing graffiti, I'm doing, painting, drawing, something like that. And I got into the jewelry class and I just really fell in love with it. And I had a traditional metalsmithing professor. His name was Tom Muir. He's a really phenomenal metalsmith and a great teacher. And he really kind of guided me through my early years as like a jeweler and metalsmith. And so I started to, follow along, and he gave me a lot of advice and said, you may want to go to grad school and get an MFA and then end up teaching. And that's what I ended up doing. And so I have this really strong background of this like traditional metalsmithing, which I think doesn't necessarily come through my work as much. But I do have this like strong love, and there's all the tools and the techniques that I use right now that I think relate to it very heavily. And so, I always had done 3D printing, and 3D printing was kind of new at the time, but it's kind of evolved more and more. And so I was 3D printing objects and kind of adding metal smithing and this and that, and kind of there was a combination of work. But now my work right now is really kind of evolved into almost entirely 3D printed objects. But what I do is I take part of the models and I cast them in fine metals like sterling silver or gold. And then I basically set stones on them and do other things that kind of create those objects. And so, it is kind of like it is a consistent reference to my background and like a really love for the craft, while also like really embracing like new technology and really finding ways to have like a firm self-expression in my own identity. So.
Oh, thank you so much. It seems like your journey starts with like an unexpected beginning, like the unexpected course registration. That's really cool. Um, and my next question is, how do you select the subjects of your artwork? Is there a central source of inspiration that guides your focus?
Yeah, so like it's my work is the subject is always like an ever-changing target. It's always something new. But I'm like really interested in this like chaotic nihilism that I think is like reflective of a former self. Especially because like, I think about my journey and the way that things change and the way that people grow, whether that's physically, emotionally, the people around them, the environments around them that I think are extremely important. And it kind of, and there's so many things that I think relate to that. But personally, I'm always thinking about the things that I have fallen into, fallen out of, and a lot of those kind of subjects tend to go into like drug use or alcohol abuse and a list of other vices that I won't get into. But those things tend to show up in my work, whether it is actually there or not. But I think it's usually like a slight nod. So.
Thank you. And the next question is, how has your artistic practice evolved over time? Were there any turning points or developments that shifted your subjects or methods?
Yeah. So when I left grad school, I was making some work that I think is somewhat relative to what I make now. It has some of the same feeling, somewhat the same style, but I think what I do now is a little bit more refined. And one of those turning points was when I left grad school, I moved to Florida, which maybe wasn't the greatest idea, because I was trying to find a job. And so, I was going around and I was looking for a job, and I ended up at this jewelry store who would let me do CAD work for them. And I didn't really know how to do CAD work, but they didn't know either. So, it was okay. So I kind of like was skating by, and I was able to really teach myself jewelry CAD a little bit better. Even though I had a jewelry background, the fine or the high jewelry world was still kind of a mystery to me, even though I would tell myself at the time I knew it all. So while I was there, I was really learning a lot of like fine jewelry techniques, whether they were teaching me or I was just kind of like watching it happen and then adapting it to my own practice. Um, and it was really impressive because I really learned like the trade of jewelry and creating and manufacturing jewelry, which then let me into starting to do the pave stone setting onto my work, which I think has been really important to the concepts of my work. But I think that was a really big turning point, and especially and I think that was also the point at which resin 3D printers were becoming more commonplace in terms of something you could purchase on your own. And so that was a really big turning point, which led me to not only create the work that I wanted to make, but also it allowed me to remove the constraints of size. So, the work I was making before was a little bit more larger and sculptural. And this led me to create more wearable objects that I think were significantly more refined. So
Thank you. And the next question is, what do you see as your role as an artist in today's society? How do you hope your work contributes to broader cultural or social conversations?
that's a great question. And I think it's kind of a hard question for me to answer because I think very little of myself as having an impact as an artist. And the main reason is because I find that if I focus so much on what I want the audience to get from my work or what I hope to impact the world, I feel like that is the antithesis of like my true creativity.
Mm.
Where I really want to create something that is like a true expression of my identity. And I think that if I have to worry about what others might think or might view, it really kind of creates a box around what I want to make. Especially because some of my subject matters maybe aren't so palatable to everybody. I think it's really important that like I make it and I show it. And whatever the impact is, I hope it's a positive one. But it is, entirely from my own creativity. And so like, those goals, I don't really want I don't want to like anticipate them doing anything. But I think that like me as an artist, like my advocacy for education and also being an educator, I think are the important parts of how I do have my own impact in society. Especially t telling people about my story and how I have grown and how I have achieved certain things that have given me, like a good life, and so I think those are the things that I think create the greater impact, at least in my opinion, where the art is really important to me, and I think it can have one, but there is no expectation of it.
Oh, I see. So it's like you more expect your influence as an educator instead of your how your artworks in like impact people in society.
Yeah, and again, it's really also just because if I want to try to impact society, I feel like I'm not going to be my true creative self. I'm
Mm.
going to create some barriers or blockades that I think people are going to get, and I don't think that that's the kind of art that I want to make. I want to make the real true expression. So,
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Oh, that's a little bit actually, because when I was looking at your artworks, I found like most of them involved a Bluetooth speaker, and you can't just open them and just like make noises or make play songs. I thought this is a kind of interaction, how you interact with the audience, but actually they're not. Can I ask more about the Bluetooth speaker? I'm personally really interested in that one.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So like a lot of my work, incorporates the Bluetooth speaker, and some newer work actually has video screens in them. But the Bluetooth speaker, I think, has more of a reflection of either the wearer or the audience. And basically, what it is it gives the opportunity for the person to be able to play their own music as
Oh.
a way to commemorate or memorialize or celebrate someone. And a lot of my work is related to the death of my mother. And so, I wanted to be able to create this object or this place that people could think about celebration and memorial. And so, and I think that music is such a powerful thing, but it's so hard to pick a certain kind of music or something like that that I think anybody could reflect on. And so I think giving the power to the audience to be able to do that, because it came from this idea where I would be driving along and then a certain song would come on the radio and like I just and sometimes I really believe in the afterlife, and so I always thought like this is someone saying something to me, because and I think that's the most powerful thing is sort of like having that expression of sound. And so that's that's maybe kind of the impact, but it's again it's I I think that making the work gives people the opportunity to find that solace, not necessarily that I am creating it specifically just for the audience impact. But yeah, and then the TV screens are a little bit more of a newer. aspect to the work as well. And those really focus on the idea of cyclical life cycles and and reincarnation and the ideas of life continuing and different cycles of your world changing. And so those, yeah. So
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. And my last question is, which of the works featured in this exhibition is your personal favorite?
yeah, so I think a couple of them are a little bit older, but there is two of them that I really like. And even though they're slightly older, there's two. It's one of them is Hot Box, which is it looks like a little car. And it's a little car that's a brooch that has set stones that look like smoke coming out of it, which is kind of reflecting on, me and my friends in a car smoking and filling up the car with a bunch of smoke and then driving along and having and this sort of like camaraderie with friends, but also this kind of escapism, that self-nihilism. And then the other one is titled Too Sweet to Smoke, which is actually relative to a time in my life where I had a really serious near-death experience, where I was held up at gunpoint when I was working at a liquor store.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, and yeah, it just sort of like made me have this, it reinvigorated this sense of life and death, I think, when I was in the middle of grad school. And I think that was right before I actually started using Bluetooth speakers in my work, but I made this work many years later, I think, kind of
Mm.
as a reflection of this sort of uh, I had all these like expectation and all of these rules that I was trying to adhere to because I was trying to be a really good artist and metalsmith. But I think that point really changed and had me reconfigure my ideas as what it is to be an artist or a creative. And I think that really let me be okay with being out of pocket or, doing things that aren't normal and really making it because I feel like it's a true expression of my own identity. And I think those two works are just really great pieces entirely. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Zach. I do not have any more questions. However, if there is anything else you'd like to add that you might have thoughts of during the interview, anything you are working on now, any shows you are going to be in soon, any lingering thoughts, feel free to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a solo exhibition coming up in September at it is a gallery called Dransfield Jewelers, which is in Richmond, Virginia. I'm really excited to show some work. I've been doing a lot of aluminum casting, which is really exciting because it creates the same pave stone set objects, but it creates a really lightweight form. And so the works are becoming more larger and sculptural. And I'm just really excited to kind of do another solo exhibition, which has been a couple years since. But yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for speaking with us today and sharing your insights and creations.